Hi, everybody. It's Laura at Sheer Passion. I hope you guys had a great day. We just came off of this huge snowstorm out here in Pennsylvania, so people have been acting a little odd. And once snow comes out here and we really don't remember how we shoveled last year or how to bend and everybody's frustrated and my allergies are blowing up my head. So I wanted to talk about something pretty interesting to me. My husband and I, as we're still wrestling through our childhoods and we're growing and we're evolving in this relationship called marriage, very different than just being boyfriend and girlfriend or being a fiance. One of the things that fascinates me is the emotion of anger, how we deal with that as a group or a society, and how we deal with that as an individual. And anger is linked to fear. And anger is the second emotion to fear. So first you fear something or you have this thought in your head and you turn to anger. And so anger leads to arguments. And anger is a very funny emotion to me. I find it hard for conservative Christians or any kind of faith-based or religion to deal with anger in a really healthy way. It's as if we're not allowed to be angry. It's as if we continually compare ourselves to God and when he got angry, and we talk about it from a scriptural standpoint instead of a human standpoint and realize why anger comes in from selfishness, from confusion, from the lack of self-worth, from the inability to see the other person or the party speaking to us sense our total self-love and worth and value. And so we get angry. And anger is something so bizarre for adults because it usually means that we are attacking one another. We're calling each other names. We're calling each other loser. You're a moron. I hate you. I can't stand you. You're fat. You're ugly. You're worthless. You can't do anything right. You give up. I'm sick of you. All of these terms come out because of anger. And anger is, in all reality, anger is a human being not realizing all of the ability to settle back, try to understand the other person. It's linked to fear that we won't be able to do those things. We won't be able to look at each other and figure each other out. We're not going to be able to get out of this and be healthier, be better, feel designed, understand these things, and then go forward, be part of a community, and sense that other people see that we have value. That's where anger comes in. And so you normally hear it, there's this conviction in our voice box. So we have this insane or intense fear of that emotion. We don't know how to deal with our anger. And because we don't in society, people don't realize, well, you can't get into a relationship, you can't get into a marriage, you can't get into a business world, you can't get into any friendship for any length of time past high school, where you're holding responsibility in a home, expecting people to come for holidays, expecting calls, expecting emails, expecting text messages, expecting letters. These things can't happen until people understand to speak clearly and honestly about their self-worth and their needs, their desires, their dreams, their love language, how they love best, how they feel loved the best. And those are things that we need to talk about. Every time somebody sits in the chair, I'm continually sharing about how Joshua and I are in an argument. And arguments for people make people think that there's an incompatibility. No, an argument is about a situation. So if Joshua and I are in an argument about something, I will back us up to our childhood. And, I can say this because my husband has dealt with this. He stonewalls for a man. He's very stubborn. He likes to shut down completely and totally turn off as if he's holding his breath and he's, played dead like a possum. And I'm the other person where I've learned to push through the anxiety and the uncomfortable, and I'm going to face the fearful situation until I'm through it on the other side. So we've got me who realizes that in that moment, I run to the anger. I run directly at the anger and the emotion and the fear. And I go, we need to push through that and get to the other side. You're talking about anxiety. You're talking about coping mechanisms. You're talking about stress. What are coping mechanisms? The brain is awesome. And whenever we're born and we're nurtured as children, we are either given things or we're not given things for our brain, not just nutritionally, but emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. So we've got all of this connection inside of our brain that either did connect and form or didn't. And as we become adults and we get into relationships, we start to reveal where we are lacking in all of those areas. And thank the Lord God Almighty that he has made my personality so intense and so wanting to see all of these things. Anger in itself keeps people from working through some of the most amazing difficulties in their life to get to the other side for total and complete healing, understanding. And then there's a bond in that relationship that cannot be broken because you've gone so far and locked out the evil that can destroy that part of the relationship. If you're married, then you understand that when your husband can drive you crazy, or vice versa, as a wife can drive your husband crazy, that when you guys got married, you believed that that person would try to see you on the other side of the argument at any time. And one of the things that I love to do with Joshua, is walk him through who he's talking to, how I see the world, how I see everything. I want us to know that we can work through these things. We can be better. We can continually move through these issues, but we are going to have to push through anxiety. And you cannot walk where you've never seen anyone else walk before. You can't be in a healthy relationship just because you got married if you hadn't had any healthy relationships or resembled healthy relationships ever. So let's talk about that. If you had grown up in a conservative family like I did, but we don't have healthy relationships, we don't have healthy relationships inside the home, family members on either side of the parents' lineage, and then at church, in business, and we didn't have anybody that we were mentoring after. We had nobody setting down a path that we could walk to get to a place where we wanted to go in our relationships. So how could we bring more people into that situation and become healthy? That's the most illogical thought process ever, and that goes for your family as well. So how did my husband and I get remarried and now have a healthy marriage? Well, first of all, by God's grace, people can learn from their mistakes, but you'd have to identify your arrogance, your pride, your ignorance, your immaturity, your selfishness, your lust, your spirituality, your emotions, your love language. You're going to have to be aware of these things. You're going to have to take both sides of the coins here, because anger in itself doesn't just come because I'm a single person in society or I'm a married person in society. I'm a daughter. I am also a sister. I am a neighbor. I am a wife. I am a boss. These things that we are allow other relationships to come into our life based on those titles that we have in our life. Even if I could guarantee that I've dealt with all of the stressful situations in my family, whenever I go out into society and I'm dealing with somebody else's family member, there is a possibility that we could misunderstand one another and I would become very angry because that person will either disrespect me, confuse me, show me that they don't care about themselves and they don't care about me, and I'm back to the beginning again. So even though I've done those things for myself, I'm looking at another person in this society who is operating within my circle of influence and has not. And if it happens to be a spouse, you can see how, whether you leave the house or not, you've got drama outside those doors. And so you need to be able to understand what we do with anger. We have got to start facing it. That is one of the things in our society that we do not face. God forbid we face anger. He gave us this emotion, and we've got to start facing it. It gets out of control, and it begins to eat away at our soul. It not only begins to eat away at us, but then it begins to eat away at others. If you're passionately loud when you're angry, so what? Anger looks different than sadness. And when you're extremely excited, you notice how you get really loud when you're excited or surprised, or you're just insanely overwhelmed with joy. Now all of a sudden that's loud, but when it's anger and it's loud, it's bad. So people don't look at the emotions and the reactions of the emotions as if, well, the guy's angry, the girl's angry. Well, what does that say? Anger is a second emotion to fear. What is she afraid of? Not being understood, not being valued, not being seen, not being counted, not being desirable, not being special, not being beautiful, not being popular, not being liked, forgotten. All of these things that somebody can be dealing with, not understanding their situation. Maybe there's a health crisis in their family line. Maybe there's an option to lose the job, and so we can't control all these things. And so anger comes in when coworkers are acting out of control and so arrogant and selfish, because a person might be losing their job and she might be dealing with anger, but her reality is that she's fearful and she doesn't really have anyone to tell. So she's got anger on the outside, fear on the inside, and nobody to talk to about these things. Now she's got two emotions that scare everybody away in society. And the reality is, if she's outside, has a driver's license, and has a job, she's felt these emotions along with everyone outside in society at least once. So we can relate to her or him going through these things, but we won't if we don't see the value of our own anger. I get angry. I get angry. I get very passionate. Actually, a lot of times on these videos, people will misconstrue my passion for anger if I'm not being funny or if I'm not using humor. I love that because the reality tells me that you live inside of a facade. You live inside of a bubble most of your life because you can't identify or differentiate between my personalities where I'm angry because of a situation that I know we can change. What is anger? Fear. Fear that everybody is going to continually walk this path of dysfunction until every last family in society is broken down and no one will trust another person. Now, if you're sexually attractive or you're financially free, wealthy, or you're part of a job that just gets you what you want, maybe you're just a simple person and you have more than you need and you seem to blend into the background, you're fine. But most of us are on the outskirts of that. If you're not sexually attractive and you don't have a lot of money and you don't have youth or health on your side, you got a lot of problems just going to the grocery store. So we've got to be honest with ourselves. Very sexually attractive people, young, healthy, and people who have money, whether you are in any of those age brackets and you have got any 4 of those things that I just mentioned, you can operate throughout life with anger and sadness and fear very differently than people who don't have those control factors in our society. Without God, we cannot see that He designed us for a reason and why all of those issues that I spoke about do not need to be ignored, and they don't need to be mistaken, and they definitely don't need to be dealt with in a way where we should be like totally shameful and backwards about it. The reality is we are going to be as strong as our weakest link in society. I don't care how many people have televised things over this screen, unless we all want to understand we are human beings, we've got decisions to make. We all can feel anger. That doesn't mean we're going to get violent. If we want to get violent, or we feel like we want to lash out or smack or hit or punch or throw a cell phone, folks, we can all relate to that. That feels good, and that feels good in that moment because the anger is like we want it out of our body. We want it out. We're so sick and tired of it. Well, we get that. Although anger doesn't show up because we made one small, minute, little, tiny decision that threw us all off. It happens to be because we continually walk a path every single day where we do not operate in understanding our total self-worth from our Creator, and that each one of our emotions is here to check in and create a balance. And so if we're dealing with anger to the point of violence, we've allowed something to go on for so long with no one to talk to, no one to relate to us, everyone we see out in society pretending as if everything's okay, and we have found ourselves violently lashing out. If there is anybody out there that thinks that that isn't relatable and understandable, you're living in a bubble. Because you'd have to understand human beings, and if you are one and you're not tapping into how anger can make you feel like you want to lash out or scream or cry and have all of these emotions run through your head, then I'd like to know how your anger stayed inside of a small little box that looks so perfect all the time. Anger's not going to look like sadness, and anger's not going to look like joy. Anger has its own box. And that's when everyone has stepped outside of joy and contentment and walking with the Lord, truly understanding their value, and we're not quick to apologize or ask questions. We're back to that accountability issue that we have in our society again. If you aren't going to walk outside of that box and ask 3 people, at least 3 people, it could be 3 strangers, as long as they're breathing air, ask a question. What did you do when you got angry? What did you do when you wanted to lash out? Well, what is the problem? How long has it been going on? What's really the undertone of that? But in society, it's like, you know what? She deserved that. He deserved that. Oh, he got what was coming to him. Oh, yeah, I would have smacked him too. The reality is smacking somebody when you're angry does actually feel good in the moment. If you're a human being and you can't understand how that would feel good when you're severely angry at someone or something, lashing out and revealing the power in smacking something does correlate to anger. The problem with it is violence doesn't change the situation, and once the person slapped, whether it felt good or not, you still have not learned to deal with the issue. You have no boundary on how it will happen again, and now both of your self-worth has changed. One person feels like they're a hierarchy so they can control with violence, and one person feels like they're below, so we're no longer equal. Our respect levels are not held up. And now we're leaving the table with dysfunctional thoughts in our mind because nobody can help us get through it. Oh, and we've got 23 more hours in the day that we got to go through until we're dead. So we have to start back with, how do we become adults incapable of dealing with anger? because you were a child that was incapable of dealing with anger. You arrived inside of an environment that was incapable of dealing with anger and sadness, and you grew up as an adult. Folks, I want to know where you find the ability to be the most amazing, smart adult on the planet coming out of dysfunctional families, and where you got that from when everyone else in the house was picking from the same dysfunctional bowl. You cannot become something that is not in the environment unless, seriously, by divine order of Jesus Christ himself, you have been handpicked to walk through life and face no evil. The reality is that society is breaking down, and every little thing that could empower humanity and could empower us to see the ability that God created us with a purpose, so our emotions have a purpose. Instead of facing them, pushing through them, not fearing them, but fearing not to face them, we decide to sit down, melt back into the dysfunctional orb of society, be on our cell phones, eat ourselves to death, ruin our relationships, God forbid we get a counselor, or ask somebody about what's going on. And the reality is, anger is only for a moment. It doesn't last long. And if you've ever noticed how you're in a very heated argument, the heat actually dissipates and reveals fear. So you deal with fear for a longer amount of time, but that anger in the beginning can scare a lot of people from talking about a subject. How convenient that the devil would be able to scare many people out of the table because somebody can bark louder or somebody can bring up dysfunction or sin. Who cares? Again, we do not sit at that table and we do not operate that we're equal in God's eyes, and sin is sin is sin. We do not sit there knowing our own list of sin because, if we told ourselves what we did, well, we wouldn't be able to sleep at night. That's wrong. Actually, if you told yourself what you did and you faced all of your sin, you would sleep at night because you're going to forgive her or him for being incapable of being superhuman. You're going to ask God to forgive you and you're going to move on. If you've ever read the Old Testament or the New Testament, we are not the first people on the planet to decide how to ruin our lives by not using the brain that God has given us. Face him or her. Face your uglies and sleep soundly. Who cares if somebody brings up something that you did in the past that was a mistake? Once you face that side of you, they have no power. It sounds pretty silly to talk about something that you already knew didn't work and are willing to tell every other human being on the planet, look, don't follow in my footsteps if you don't want to end up where I was. And I got to be honest with you. In that moment, in that time of my life, it made sense because I was angry, I was sick, I was so tired of listening to the lies and not seeing anybody else give me an option. But I appreciate you bringing that up today because it sounds just as stupid now as it was back then. Thank God I'm older today to understand why I was acting like that in my past. Now let's get back to the subject at hand. We do not have our badass Jesus backpack on, figuring out we all make mistakes, but there is a huge difference with facing them or sweeping them under a rug. And folks, you can't pray your mistakes away. Don't bring Jesus into this without you doing the work. Do not bring a sovereign God and his ability to give us the Bible and give us the wherewithal to make decisions and think that he then is going to just perform miracles on your family tree until the end of time. Based on what in Scripture? And why would he do that if it would operate outside of your free will? It doesn't make any sense to me. There's a whole lot that the Bible doesn't go over. Why? Not because people are stupid. See, he left a lot out of the Bible because we are not stupid. We were given enough information. He can't explain everything about humanity because then it wouldn't tap into your free will. He is sovereign. He already knows what we're going to do. But it wouldn't have mattered if he told us what you and I were going to do. It wouldn't change our attitudes until we realized we had to make the decision. Just because we go to church or we go to work or we pay our taxes doesn't mean we go home and we face our situations with pride. You will never, ever spoon feed me that lie. That is the most seductive lie that is out there, is that because we look well dressed and we have cars and we're middle class, we must be handling things because we got this far. That is a lie. If you can't ask people specific questions about their relationship and get a specific answer, They don't know where they're at. They are surviving the day. They're surviving the month. They're surviving the new goal, the get married, the buy a house, have kids, change your career, go back to school, fulfill your childhood dream, 2 vacations a year, sick pay. Folks, when you run out of these little goals on growing up and you're about tapping into 40, 41 years of age, and you've already had the fun you've experienced sex, you've experienced money, you've experienced vacation, you've experienced changing your look, buying a new car, whatever it is. Now all of a sudden, you're at that age waiting for God to come back and save you from this wretched planet that continually raises gas prices and taxes. What are you living for? And how did you get that far without dealing with all of the emotions? People are afraid to stand up and deal with these things. People are afraid to lash out, ask questions, be their true self because they're afraid of being left. The funny thing about society is we don't plug into each other, but we live close to each other. And so even though we don't talk to each other at the grocery store and we don't always look up at each other at the gym, it's different than leaving somebody inside the home. It's better for people to assume that everybody is okay than for people to know that we're not. That is also part of the healing that we keep ourselves from having because we do not understand that is the lie. We cannot imagine our healthier, brighter, better understanding self when we are not her. We cannot see the new person or the new side of ourselves of understanding healing if we've never healed. We can't understand how we would ask somebody else for forgiveness when we've done something wrong until we felt the healing of forgiveness when we've forgiven ourselves. Once again, it goes back to self-love, self-worth from a creator who said that between my husband and I, we are equals, that we are equals in the sight of the Lord, and that he made us and that we are designed with a purpose. We also have free will, which means we've been able to sin, and we have loads of it. And like I said before, I love to look at it, talk at it, sift through it, put it back in my head, bring it back out, sift through it again, put it back in my head, bring it out, sift through it again, and try to figure out what was going on with me in that moment. Why was it that I was finding a very hard time relating to people and I was wanting to lash out or be very angry? And it's because everybody that was around me was loving me to the most optimum of what I could be, right? No! It's because we weren't getting it. Every single person that I'm around deals with self-worth issues. We don't know how to talk to each other when our feelings are hurt or we're angry or we're fearful. We don't have the mechanism inside the head. Folks, you cannot just pray this away without taking the steps to talk. Unless you're going to be divinely touched from heaven, you've got to stand up to this. You can't wish this away. You can't grow out of this. Communication, dealing with anger and fear, has nothing to do with riding a bike. You can't fall off the bike and get back on. Just because you can talk to your coworker doesn't mean you can come home, talk to your husband about your sex life, or talk to your daughter about drugs. And how do you talk to her about drugs? Because how you dealt with it. And if you can't go home and do those things just because you talked about what your job wanted you to do at home or what new movie is out or how you had to shovel your driveway, does not mean that your communication skills then go over into the psychological, intellectual, spiritual, emotional place. It's not like riding a bike. You can't just say to your mouth, bring out words that describe how I feel about difficult situations just because it brings out words about how you felt about shoveling snow. It's two different things. That's why we can't do it. That's why no matter how many times you put people in a room and you say, talk about your childhood, talk about the positives and talk about the negatives, you will get people keeling over left and right. Anxiety attacks, panic attacks, total shockwave like this. And then there I'm going to be. Let's all get in a huddle. Come on, let's all huddle it out. Come on, get in here. Hold each other. We're going to get through this. It'll be all right. I wish I could give that to you. But I had to walk a certain walk to get where I am. I got to be honest with you. If you came out of the womb like this, I don't know. Childbirth would be more like a rocket coming off. I grew into understanding who I was. I took the steps. I was designed differently than other people. That doesn't really mean anything. I still had to choose. I still had to make decisions. I still had to feed myself and understand how my body worked, try to figure out how I saw myself in an industry that is, there's a salon on every doorstep. Everybody thinks they can cut hair. People see it on Pinterest. People do it in their kitchen. People do it in between their appointments. So, what's a hairstylist? Yeah, what's a hairstylist? Only one of the most amazing jobs in the world. And so, thank goodness I had to stand behind that chair for all of those years and listen and watch and deal with other people's issues and dysfunctions. Thank you. Because it has made me see this is an epidemic or a pandemic or what do they call that? Worldwide epidemic? It's swarm-demic, international-demic. You just put demic on the end of it and you sound like you know what you're talking about. I have to say that I love people, but I don't love that we continually sit down and we do not use the side of the brain that says, you can do it. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We can absolutely start to change by changing the perspective of how we see our own self-worth. So if you have some anxiety when you're talking to somebody about how they hurt your feelings, good. Because it has to be different than when you're talking to somebody about not hurting your feelings. If it was so easy to just talk to each other about when we made mistakes, it would be so easy then to ask for forgiveness and to recognize we shouldn't get there. Folks, it's got to look different than the good times. It cannot be the same as just being joyful or content. So if you're angry or you're fearful, recognize that the inside change of your body, feeling like somebody is holding all of your organs up at gunpoint, and somebody shoved a grapefruit in your throat, you now no longer speak English because you can't even remember how to speak. So what? You know what? I would rejoice in that. Because if you have that less times than you have your joy or your contentment, thank goodness. But you have got to start looking at the steps that you are going to have to take to push through that. It's going to look different when you talk to people about being frustrated, upset, confused, angry, pushed, and fearful. Get in line. There isn't a human being out there that doesn't have to walk that walk. We've got to start understanding that the value of who we are is facing all of our emotions in those moments and realizing if we are adults, we need to speak openly about anger and fear, and we need to make good decisions to move into the next day. We are going to do this. We are going to do this one person at a time. I am not giving up on us, but I will tell you, put your big girl panties on, because it is not where you're going to sit in a corner and pray yourself away from society. You're going to need to pray while you're getting in your car and ask God for the strength to come alongside of you to do all of the habits that you don't have. Whether it's counseling, reading a book, calling someone up, facing something, facing your fear, pushing yourself to do your dreams, meet your goals, make goals. You can ask him to give you the strength, but if you think you're going to sit in the house and you're going to pray away these issues, it's ridiculous. Remember all of the things that God gave you as a human being, not just your mind, but your limbs, the limbs that you have. We are not all to sit in prayer pose and hope that he just wishes it away for us. But you can ask him to help you get your butt in your car and make the right decisions during the day. That is when you start getting in a relationship with Jesus Christ. If you think that all of us are going to find him sitting in prayer pose, acting like the Dalai Lama, who that guy is that sits in, I don't know these people. They're all halfway across the world. Gandhi, sitting in prayer pose and continually sitting there and thinking about everything that it might be out of whack. We can't all do that. If we can't all sit in prayer pose and wish our problems away, then it doesn't work. Guess what does work? When we all get involved and we bring God with us. That's a relationship. We can relate to that. Oh, hey, Lord, I'm going to take you and the Holy Spirit outside to see all the people that you made, right? That's what it's about. It's about relating. We're not going to sit in our living rooms and go, oh, Lord, please help us get through all of our problems. Even the ones that I actually cause every minute of every day because I don't work on myself. Yeah, no, we're going to go out there and we're going to get our big girl panties on and we're going to start doing the work. And we're going to take Jesus with us like we do our husbands or we do our children or our cats or our dogs. We're going to start realizing that it's prayer all the time. And so maybe your prayer life will change about how you're praying for it, but you're still in the game. That's why he made human beings. We are not to sit and hum all day. That's my soapbox. I'm ending on it. I'm hungry. I want to go eat dinner. It's been awesome. Thanks so much. I do have a blog now, so that's been awesome as well. Writing things down. I'm working through things on there in a new way, and I'm just going to be prepping things to put in a book, so bear with me. This is all new, and I appreciate the support. I would just send out the invite to, or subscribe to your friends, SHEERPASSION, and that's on YouTube. And the blog is Sheer Passion to Blog at blogspot.com. SHEER Passion, the number 2, blogspot, blog. Sheer Passion to Blog at blogspot.com. That's not that easy to say. Okay, Sheer Passion to Blog at blogspot.com. Thanks so much, guys. See you next week.